From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. We start in Chile, where Camilo Catrillana, a 24-year-old Mapuche, was murdered on Wednesday afternoon by members of the National Police. His death came after an intense raid in the small community of Temucuicuy in the Araucania region of the country. Catrillana was shot in the head by members of the Jungle Command, a special unit of the police. They reportedly charged against the community, openly firing on the Mapuche. This raid took place on Wednesday afternoon in a community that has constantly been harassed by the police under a government plan that seeks to pacify the region. The Senate in Argentina is currently debating the proposed budget for 2019. The debate is expected to last until midnight, at which point the Senate will vote on whether to approve it or not. President Mauricio Macri needs this budget to be approved to maintain an agreement made with the International Monetary Fund. Many believe this budget will only further the government's austerity measures, hurting those most vulnerable. Hundreds of people have taken to the streets of Buenos Aires to protest the proposed budget. Many gathered outside Congress, banging on the fences set up to keep them out. Protesters believe this budget will not help with the country's economic crisis and demanded it struck down. Our correspondent in Argentina, Edgardo Esteban, has more details.
The debate continues in the Senate over the 2019 budget, which has caused a lot of turmoil among the people because of the ongoing recession and the adjustment measures it will bring. This budget is a direct response to the demands of the agreement between the government of Mauricio Macri and the International Monetary Fund. The debate is expected to last 12 hours. The government has guaranteed the necessary number of votes to approve the budget, a vote that will happen close to midnight. There is a lot of tension and high expectations. Protests are ongoing outside of the Senate in rejection of this bill, which will affect the most vulnerable sectors in Argentina.
Cuba has announced it is pulling out of a program through which it supplied doctors to poor communities in Brazil. Some 20,000 Cuban doctors and medical staff have worked in Brazil as part of the More Doctors program. It was set up by then-President Dilma Rousseff in 2013, in conjunction with the Pan American Health Organization. The Cuban government says the president-elect Jair Bolsonaro has insulted the Cuban doctors and promised to change the terms of the program. Our correspondent in Brasilia, Danai Galetti, has the latest.
The Cuban Health Ministry has announced the departure of the Cuban doctors who were here in Brazil as part of the program Más Médicos, or More Doctors, created in 2013 as an initiative of the Brazilian president Dilma Rousseff. The program sent Cuban and foreign doctors to remote and vulnerable parts of the country, including the favelas in Rio and Brasilia. It meant the first time that more than 700 municipalities had ever enjoyed the presence of a doctor. 20,000 doctors and health professionals took part in the program over the last 5 years, and they treated around 130 million people. In 2016, after the impeachment of Dilma Rousseff, Cuba said it would continue with the program in conjunction with the Pan American Health Organization, if the agreements with the local authorities were respected. But now, with the president-elect Jair Bolsonaro, has announced that he will change the agreement by only hiring doctors individually and forcing them to validate their qualifications if they want to continue working in the program. This is why the Cuban Health Ministry took the decision to end the program.
Still in Brazil, former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva was questioned today in court for a second alleged corruption case. There are currently no details about the questioning. After being taken to court, he was returned to prison in Curitiba. Lula's supporters gathered to wish him a good day outside the prison where he is already serving a 12-year sentence. They say this new case, known as the Atibaia case, is just another attempt to use the courts to keep the former president out of political life. Former presidential candidate Fernando Haddad visited Lula just before he was taken to court. He was joined by the Workers' Party president, Gleisi Hoffmann. They both condemned what many see as the latest attempt at persecuting the former president.
I was with President Lula. He remains calm. He is sure that if his arguments are heard, justice will be respected. And he will be absolved. He is ready for today and is grateful for all the solidarity the people have shown.
Lula is once again being questioned, with no evidence to speak of. What was Lula's crime? They have no proof to support the charges. Lula is not aware of any of the things he's now being accused of.
The main body of the first caravan of Central American migrants is moving forward to the border state of Sonora, getting closer every day to the U.S. border. Many are boarding buses to cover the distance they still have left before reaching their goal. There are about 3,500 people in this group. It has been over a month since they set off from their home countries. They all reject the claims of U.S. President Donald Trump, who has said the caravans are full of gang members. If anything, migrants said it is gangs that caused them to flee in the first place. And our correspondent in Sinaloa, Pablo Perez, gives us an update of the migrants' journey.
We are right now at the La Concha phytosanitary station. This is the place where the migrant caravan arrived yesterday, most of them, because there are still over 800 that are on their way from the state of Nayarit. And here, the people of Sinaloa have received them, fed them, and treated them medically. But there's a problem that Sinaloa also has been struck by Hurricane Willa, so they're heavily damaged, and they have their own casualties. So they say they cannot take care either of the migrant caravan, but they are collaborating with buses that are leaving this place, and they are taking them all the way to the next state, Sonora. And that's a long ride. It's 690 kilometers. That will be a record distance for the migrant caravan in only one day, but they're not doing it all together, but in small quantities. So far, they tell us that 1,200 have left this point since yesterday, and they are continuously leaving this place in 40 people groups, all the way to Navojoa, Sonora, which will be their next stop.
Thank you, Pablo, for that report. The U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis visited the U.S.-Mexico border on Wednesday. Here, he defended the deployment of thousands of military troops to await the Central American migrant caravan. Mattis said U.S. soldiers were making rapid progress setting up barriers along the border and rehearsing helicopter operations to help support U.S. border personnel.
What piece of advice would you give me?
Right now, the only thing we've been asked for is to put in obstacles, provide transportation, and to provide housing for border. They've had to move a number of border patrol people in a position where they just didn't, they moved them from other places. So obstacle emplacement, transportation.
Our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Jorge Gestoso, brings us more about the visit.
Thank you very much. Jim Mattis, the Secretary of Defense, is traveling today to McAllen, Texas, to meet with troops deployed to the border with Mexico. We're talking about 7,000 troops that has been ordered to be deployed, 2,800 in Texas, the other ones in neighboring California and Arizona. President Trump was ordering the deployment previous the midterm elections, saying that was a threat to the national security, the proximity, quote-unquote proximity of a caravan coming from Central America with migrants. He was saying that we're coming to invade the U.S., and analysts say that was absolutely a political stunt in order to try to reassure their voters, the base of his party, because most definitely the majority of that caravan still very far away from the border. Only just a group of about 350 migrants have arrived to Tijuana in the border with California, and they were trying to get into the border with the United States. Most definitely, what the president is trying to do is impress the crowds that migrants represent a threat, that they say that even they bring different illnesses like lepra, like tuberculosis, like smallpox, in order to try to create fear and to create an atmosphere of reluctance to see migrants. Most definitely, Jim Mattis is going to try to say that the Secretary of Defense, the Department of Defense, is supporting what is called customs and border protection. That is exactly the assignments that they have to do. We don't know yet, and the price of the operation is not known yet, but could go between $40 million and $110 million. We go back to you now.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. On Wednesday, torrential rains in the Peruvian region of Huánuco caused landslides and destroyed 80 homes. No deaths or injuries have been reported so far, but at least 30 families were left homeless. Residents are currently with no running water, and classes have been suspended for the time being.
Everything has been flooded. My animals have died. Everything was flooded.
Water and mud went into the homes, and since they are made out of adobe, they collapsed.
Colombian President Iván Duque has passed his 100th day in office. During this time, many have claimed he has not done enough for the issues that plague the country. Our correspondent in Bogotá, José Manuel Jiménez, brings us more.
100 days after President Iván Duque took office, experts believe he has not issued economic, political, or even legal proposals to help Colombia. Duque's reforms have been seriously questioned by both Congress and the people. Even the ruling party has criticized his reforms. During his time in office, there have been numerous protests by students, indigenous, and social organizations. 183 social leaders have been killed in 2018 alone, and during the last 100 days, there have been around 40 killings of social leaders with no government response. The peace process and the dialogues with ELN remain in standby, and the international community has continuously criticized the Colombian government for this. Iván Duque has also avoided talks with Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. The latest scandal to rock his presidency was the poisoning of Alejandro Pizano, who was a key witness in the Odebrecht bribery scandal. All in all, Duque's first 100 days in office have left many Colombians disappointed, as his government doesn't seem to be doing much to put an end to the many conflicts that plague the country.
Still in Colombia, the Attorney General has been accused once again of corruption, this time related to bribes paid by the Brazilian construction company Odebrecht. He is now being pressured to resign.
Jorge Enrique Pizano was a key witness in the Odebrecht corruption scandal. Before he died, he gave a local media channel several audios that could prove that the current Attorney General, Néstor Humberto Martínez, knew about the bribery scheme since 2015.
Since you managed to win the battle with those bastards from Odebrecht, now we don't know what we got ourselves into. We don't know if they are giving money to the paramilitaries or if they are stealing it themselves, those bastards. We don't know if they are paying bribes to foreign governments or to the Colombian government.
According to the audios, the lawyer of Corfi Colombiana had detailed information about the irregularities in contracts, the relations with the paramilitary groups.
In several countries, presidents and vice presidents have fallen because of Odebrecht. when they were about to arrest Marcelo Odebrecht Martinez as a legal advisor to that company, had information about the corrupt activities taking place, either with bribes or with funding for the paramilitaries.
Senator Jorge Enrique Robledo accuses the Colombian elite of appointing Martinez as Attorney General to avoid any investigation into these big companies.
Presidente de la República,
President Juan Manuel Santos, who put Martinez there, is protected. So is Iván Duque. If it wasn't like that, they would have been accused. Álvaro Uribe, Andrés Pastrana, and César Gaviria are also protected.
Están dedicados a sostener.
Robledo points to the accusations that Odebrecht financed the presidential campaigns of Santos, of Iván Zuluaga, and the current president Iván Duque. The investigations into this went nowhere.
Es una desvergüenza lo que está sucediendo.
What is happening is a disgrace. The country is falling apart. The elite has no consideration for the country. It's embarrassing.
Y que nos avergüenza ante el mundo civilizado.
The Attorney General has also been accused of hiding assets abroad and putting money in tax havens.
Hay unos criterios.
There are legal values, as well as ethical and political ones involved here. The Attorney General should step aside.
A lo largo de estos años,
Congress has announced a debate on the issue, but many are calling on the Attorney General to resign immediately.
The families of the 44 missing crew members from the Argentine submarine Ara San Juan have expressed frustration at the slow pace of the efforts to locate the submarine. Speaking on the anniversary of the disappearance, relatives asked President Mauricio Macri to provide more support and resources to the team that is searching for the submarine.
Because we have spent 52 days in Plaza en Mayo, enduring the weather, hunger, rats, being spied on by drones and not having the government support, or being received by the president, even being a few meters from his house.
The Chilean Congress has approved President Sebastián Piñera's controversial Safe Classrooms law with over 100 votes in favor.
This is not Iraq. This is a public school in Santiago de Chile. The police are preparing to burst into a high school and fight students. There is now a law that allows such actions. Just a few weeks before the school year is set to end, the Safe Classroom bill will finally turn into a law.
Opposition parties were generally in favor of this project. In the end, we could see how they turned into part of the problem and not of the solution for communities.
A lack of decent bathrooms and even classrooms, the absence of teachers, poor infrastructure, low resources. All of this shows the decay of public education. Abandoned by the government, the students decided to take to the streets, but the answer they received was violent repression from the state.
It seems the state is the only one that can act aggressively, and it's not only violence what they use. There have been reports of sexual abuse, so this is actually escalating. The people call the law the Safe Cage Project.
Despite the changes that were made to the project, like not expelling violent students as a precautionary measure, the repression that treats students as if they were criminals still remains.
This harms not only student organizations, it also harms their right to decide. So our call is to reject this law and fight for our demands instead.
Public education activists say they will keep fighting against the government's violence.
If their main goal is to cover up a faulty education system by implementing daily stigmatization and repression against students, then this new law is the best way to achieve it. Now the remaining question is, who are the true enemies here? Public education or democracy in this country?
In the following days, this controversial project will become a law, and many expect that when it does, schools will only face even more repression.
The ongoing trial of murdered Honduran indigenous leader Berta Cáceres, which was originally postponed last week to be restarted on Tuesday, resumed on Monday, with authorities failing to inform the victim's family or the press. Earlier we spoke with journalist Silvio Carrillo, who is Berta Cáceres' nephew, about the constant irregularities in the trial.
Simply a pattern by the government that continues to this day. The U.S. Embassy has said that they believe in this U.S. government can handle this case. Clearly, there's no political will to do so. This is just more evidence of everything we've been saying, that this government is maybe involved in her murder. We don't know, but they certainly should not be taking up this case. They don't have the capacity nor the political will, because so many wealthy individuals who are part of the government might be involved, as well as the army and many state actors. And it's unclear whether they really want justice or not in Honduras, and we don't believe that's the case.
We'll take a short break now. More news in a minute. Welcome back. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has warned the United States that their decision to renew sanctions on Iran is a wrong path that will lead to the suffering of everyday Iranians. In an address to his cabinet, Rouhani said that the United States has shown clear contempt of international law and regulations in its quest to suppress other nations. The U.S. has reinstated all the sanctions that were previously lifted as part of the Iran nuclear deal.
And today, it is clear to everyone that these tyrannical, wrong sanctions by the U.S. will result in the suffering of our dear noble nation. And if the people related to the U.S. had the right verdict, that this power is a cruel power, today, this verdict is even more accurate, that the U.S. certainly doesn't respect international laws and regulations.
The British cabinet has supported a draft Brexit deal that was agreed with the European Union. According to an announcement by Prime Minister Theresa May, after a 5-hour cabinet meeting, they reached a collective decision to accept the agreement and outline a political declaration.
But the collective decision of Cabinet was that the government should agree the draft withdrawal agreement and the outline political declaration. This is a decisive step which enables us to move on and finalise the deal in the days ahead.
Meanwhile, British citizens have had mixed reactions to the Cabinet's endorsement of the Brexit deal.
But it's too early to say. We haven't seen the details yet. It will become, the situation starts to get real as of yesterday. So within the next 2 days, things will become much clearer.
I don't think it should end with a referendum because people have voted. And it wasn't what I wanted, but that's the vote. What would we do? Just keep having different referendums every time? That's not a solution. We just have to accept what we've got and get on with it.
Now let's take a look at some other stories making headlines from around the world.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has met with his South Korean counterpart Moon Jae-in on the sidelines of the third summit of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations in Singapore on Wednesday. Moon Jae-in thanked Russia for the support towards peace on the Korean peninsula. Italy's Interior Minister Matteo Salvini received 51 asylum seekers from Niger at the military airport of Patricia Mare in Pomezia on Wednesday. The asylum seekers were staying in refugee camps of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and were selected by the agents together with the Italian government. They are the first regular refugees accepted in Italy since Salvini became minister in June.
Women, children, mothers, fathers, disabled people. My goal was and still is to open the doors of Italy to those who flee war and are suffering, and close the doors of Italy to those who want to bring war home.
A Kenyan judge has sentenced 2 police officers to death for the murder of a lawmaker's bodyguard and his 2 relatives in 2014. Amnesty International said the result was a victory against extrajudicial killings. Police in Scotland have arrested an activist at a protest against the former chief strategist for White House, Stephen Bannon. According to reports, police said the man was arrested on charges of threatening and abusive behavior.
We come to the end of this news brief. These and many other stories you can find on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.